Welcome to Lift Your Future, a podcast that teaches you coping skills through stories, methods, and proven techniques to improve relationships and outcomes in your personal and professional life. I'm Nicole Winkler, a licensed therapist and executive coach. On this podcast, we'll share relatable life experiences designed to help you grow. I will provide easy, practical ways to develop thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to impact your life, both personally and professionally. My goal is simple: to help you lift your future. Okay, so I was asked to record an introductory episode for you. I did so, and it was very awkward. Nobody is going to want to watch that or listen to that. I recognized and realized I really struggle to talk about myself. And so I talked to my producer, Matt, about it, and he told me I have to talk about myself to give you guys some information and some insight into who I am and why I'm doing this. So he graciously agreed to come on and ask me questions. So we're going to do a Q&A so you can get to know me a little bit more.
I've got some super intimate questions.
Oh boy. All right.
Okay, so this is...
Let me buckle up, hold on.
So tell us about you. So what made you get started in helping people when it comes to counseling and therapy? Like, what was the big reason that made you want to get into this profession?
So a common answer, I think, among many people who study psychology is my life. My family life, growing up, I wanted to understand myself more. I wanted to understand my family more, why I was the way I was, why I thought the way I did. I don't know that I really connected my thinking with my behaviors and my feelings yet. I was not there. But I had gone to therapy as a teenager and had a really wonderful experience there. I felt understood, I felt heard, especially in those adolescent years where you really are fighting so hard for control over your life, but there's still so many authority figures, not just parents, but school and work and all these other kind of people in power over you, and you're really trying to have all this autonomy, you have all these ideas and all this energy, and you can't. You feel very much in a box. And so therapy was really beneficial for me at that point in time. So when I started college, and then I stopped college, and then I worked for a while, and then I started back with college. I definitely did not go the traditional route of school, but when I found counseling and therapy, that was like, that's it, sign me up, I want to do that. 100%, I know my path in life.
Do you feel like it was like putting a science behind feelings? Or like, how would you describe, like, was it like having a linear process or a way to understand or explain things so things didn't feel so out of control necessarily?
So that's a really good question. I did actually, through counseling theories class, which I've had 3 times, and then I also teach that course. I love teaching that course. You learn about the different theoretical perspectives leading up to psychotherapy. And everybody that is in the therapy world has some sort of background. Like, some people train in psychoanalysis, which is Freud's theory. There are still schools for that are specific to that. Some people are behavioralists, and they study really only behavioral change. That's how we can measure that. That's measurable. It's very easy to kind of follow those lines, and that is very linear. There's also a humanistic approach, which is like a Carl Rogers approach of client-centered therapy, where Carl Rogers said, if you listen to people and you give them unconditional positive regard, they are going to find their own answers themselves for the most part. And then there's other theories like cognitive therapy, and that was, what is your thinking? What's going on in the brain? Nothing happens in our body. We don't say anything, we don't do anything until our brain tells it to do it. So some theorists would say cognitive is the most important approach, because your brain is literally everything. It tells your body, it tells everything what to do. So it starts with your thoughts. Well, then somebody else came along and said, well, I think cognitions and behaviors go together. So let's see what that's all about. And that's probably one of the most widely researched, cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the most widely researched therapies to date. There's also solution-focused therapy now. That one's become quite a bit more popular. There's ACT. There's a lot of different theoretical models, but I loved learning about all of them. I understood a place for all of them. And while Freud is disregarded by many for his psychosexual development that ends at the age of 12, which I think now can all agree that that's not true. He still was the first person to really start writing about it and researching it, and that kind of got the ball rolling. So to answer your question in a very long way, and this is why I needed you to do this for me, I do think it helped me identify things in my life. I think it also made me not feel so alone. And it was like, hey, we all have our stuff. Like everybody has their stuff. It's all how we handle it. And some of us use defense mechanisms really well. I was good at a lot of those. Others of us kind of avoid. We just aren't going to deal with it. We're not going to think about it. It's not happening. And some of us are more explosive, and we're going to be more aggressive and attack it if there's a problem that arises in our life or a conflict. But the different cycles and patterns of that are super interesting to me. So I learned about it for myself, but I also learned about it to help other people. And I had said, I'm only going to work with adolescents. I understand adolescence. It's a very difficult time in life. I really want to give that to adolescents. And so that's where I did start my career, was working with adolescents.
And your career, I mean, people typically think of like counseling or a therapist, and they think like, person sitting and a person on the couch and talking.
Which is only Freud, only Freud did that, which is so funny.
Yeah,
yes. That's why I put you on a couch.
Yes, I know. I'm noticing that now. I'm picking that up now.
Hence the set.
But your career has spanned a lot more than just that. I know right now you're working on your doctorate.
Yes.
Which is awesome, and a lot of work.
Oh gosh, yes, a lot.
But prior to where you are today as an executive coach, helping, let's start back with like where your career has taken you, because I know a little bit about you as far as working. You've worked with everybody from inmates in prison to just a lot of different areas. Kind of give us a highlight reel of where your career has taken you from college, post-college to today.
Sure, and I think that there's some lessons some lessons I've learned along the way as well about that might help some listeners. I started in the penitentiary setting as well after I worked with adolescents, and ultimately I took that job because I wanted to get my college paid for, to continue on with my education and get a master's degree, and they would pay for college. And at the state level, I had good health benefits, and going to work in the community as a mental health professional or as a substance abuse professional can be difficult at times, especially financially. I relate it kind of to teaching. It is a lot of work, and I'm not shying away from work, but it's also, we still have to pay our bills. So I took a position that would allow me not to have to pay for my college. And I didn't know what to think of that. I said, I only want to work with adolescents. Well, then the jobs that were available for adolescents were at night when I had to be at grad school, or they were on the weekends, doing groups on the weekends, and I wanted to still have my weekends. I worked full time. I wanted to still have my weekends. So I said, okay, fine. And then my next internship was with adult women. I was like, oh no, I don't know if I can do this. Well, I ended up loving it. I grew so much as a person, as a woman through that experience, and getting to know these women and watching their recovery. It was phenomenal. So then this job became available in the prison system within the state. I applied and I did get the position. I thought, okay, I'm only going to be here a couple of years to pay for school. I met the most amazing people, and I'm talking the other therapists that I worked with, people who mentored me while I was there, and all of my clients. I learned so much about life through them, with them, for them. I'd go home and research something and say, I don't know anything about that. I will see, because we didn't have access to any internet while we were there. You get there, you lock up your entire life, like your purse, your phone, your car keys go in a locker, you lock it all away, you go through the Sally port, and like the doors close and they're really loud, and they could be scary, I suppose. But you're going into an institution at that point. You hit the yard, I'd walk about half a mile to get to my office or my building. But I never felt alone in there. I never felt scared in there. I was very aware of where I was and who I was working with. The level of awareness cannot go away. That's definitely true. But ultimately, everybody was there trying to get out and live a better life. And that's the thing. You can live a better life in prison, and that equates to outside of prison. And so I had numerous clients that were willing to do the work, and it was remarkable to see the changes that they made with their sobriety, because there's still drugs in there. They can still get high, they can still get drunk. I wouldn't want to drink anything that they make in there, but
Toilet wine.
it apparently works. It gets the job done. But and then I had transitioned from there to the county jail, teaching classes there. I loved that position because I got to work with men and women, and I have a special place in my heart also working with actually men, women, and adolescents now, and children, because all phases of life, no matter what, are super important. And I think I grew through that experience, knowing I will never put myself in a box again and say, I won't work with this population, or I will only work with this population, because I feel like that's not challenging me, and I'm not living up to my best self when I do that.
So, I mean, a very eclectic clientele that you've served, I guess.
Yes, because then I went to EAP, Employee Assistance Program, which is a wonderful program, a wonderful experience there. I worked more with businesses there and employees, and the mental health aspect of larger organizations. And so I found that was a really important niche to me, because it kind of brought my business mind and my mental health mind together and coupled them together. So that was a huge jump I didn't necessarily expect or anticipate, but it was wonderful, because that led me to executive coaching, which is coaching with businesses, business owners. I'm married to an entrepreneur, and that brain is a very unique brain, and I've come to really appreciate it over the course of many years. And where I used to find a lot of fault in it, I now find a lot of appreciation and understanding. So I'm able to kind of coach on that as well. And that piece of emotional intelligence in business is really important to me. Why can't we talk about feelings? And why can't we be aware of our own feelings, what's going on within us, and be aware of other people's feelings, what's going on within them, and then also controlling and maintaining those. Because just because we're at work doesn't mean we don't have emotions. So.
When you look at like prisoners, like literal prisoners, and then people who maybe feel like they're a prisoner in their own life, a lot of that stems from work and maybe not being happy, because really it's our jobs and the things we do, it gives our life purpose. And so if your purpose in life, if you don't feel like you have that, or it's not what you think it should be, that can have serious ramifications. So what's the comparisons that you've seen between working with literal prisoners and then today as an executive coach working with people who are, yes, they're free, but maybe they're in their own prison by being stuck in a state of mind that you're trying to help them grow out of?
Thank you for that question. Yes. So I've said ever since I did work with the prison population, if you don't work on yourself while you're here, you have this time. This is time that most people don't get for a timeout in their life to work on themselves. I don't know, maybe you can speak to yourself. Would you ever like to have a timeout in your life to be like, hey, I want 6 months to just work on me, okay, and not be bothered by anyone else? Yeah. We don't get that when we're just living, and we have responsibilities and we have things that are required of us. But I would always say, if you don't fix what's going on up here in your thinking and your thought process, you will remain locked up even when you are physically released. And I think that's what your question is pertaining to. How many of us are living, grinding, going day to day, but we're not happy, or we are unfulfilled, or we don't know how to set boundaries because we're being walked on? And that's a great topic for another podcast, but when did you learn how to set healthy boundaries for yourself? Well into adulthood, probably. You and I have had conversations about that, but I didn't learn about boundaries till I was in my 20s. What do you mean a boundary is a physical thing? Here's a line, don't cross it. No, there's so much more to boundaries than that. So being able to provide that education to people and kind of unlock those parts of themselves that they didn't know necessarily or didn't know how to apply, that's what I get to do now, and I love it.
I feel like we each have a hidden superpower, and it's often in superhero movies. It's the characters it's what they perceive as their weakness that turns out to actually be their greatest strength. And I feel like everybody in real life, not in the comic books, but here in real life, has that same scenario where we have these things we think are weaknesses, and it's oftentimes we look at empathy and feelings and emotions as a weakness. We're taught not to share, not to learn or ask questions about it, and so we see it as a weakness. But it sounds to me what you help people do is tap into that discovery that this is actually your greatest strength.
Yes.
Once you tap
and
into
use
those
how
emotions.
to use it.
And how to use it, yeah.
Yes. Well, for example, like even recording this introductory video, it evokes some nervousness or anxiety, which would link up to the feeling of fear. And what's the gift of fear? There's a gift. Why do we feel afraid? To protect ourselves. Like the gift of fear is to protection. And so thinking through that, what am I trying to protect myself from? Is there anything I should really be afraid of? Well, no. So I'm going to get there and I'm going to talk to Matt. And then, we'll proceed however Matt tells me I need to proceed. Because this is your wheelhouse, you're really good at this, and I appreciate it a lot. But that was even just my cognitive dialogue on the drive here today was, okay, I'm going to have this conversation with Matt. What am I feeling? Okay, what's the gift of that feeling? Why is that a good thing? And is it true or not? I do fact or fiction. Is this a fact or is it fiction? Well, I am kind of making up this script in my head or this story in my head, like, oh man, what if I mess up? Well, what if I do mess up? I'm going to mess up. I'm human. And I'm going to laugh at myself probably. So
people, when you're helping clients today as an executive coach, and you're like you said, business owners, entrepreneurs, individuals, there's no criteria necessarily that says this is the type of person or organization they're helping, because you have a kind of a broad spectrum. But I think everybody, their goal is to achieve success, and how you define success is individualized. My success is spending more time with my family, or my success, maybe it is salary, maybe it's accomplishments, or maybe it's just doing what I love to do. And so what can we expect to hear from in upcoming episodes of the podcast to help people through your executive coaching experience and what you do now, some things people can expect, or techniques, or to help people achieve that success or find that success that they're striving for?
Yes, great question. So one thing is conflict, how we manage conflict. Conflict is inevitable in any relationship that's worthwhile. And that is at work, that's at home. Sometimes we don't want to have a relationship with someone, but they're your coworker. So you are then forced to have a relationship with that person, whether you like it or not, unless you want to get a different job or unless they leave. So conflict management, the drama triangle, and how that plays into our lives in many different facets and ways. The CBT triangle, I'll talk about some different strategies about how that works with our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. I'll tie a lot of stories back to that because I think there's a lot of different ways that we can use it across the spectrum. I will talk about depression and anxiety and major, just any mental health component, because I think we all struggle with that from time to time. And let's see, what else? I just started putting together a workbook, so I'm really excited about this workbook. I have 50 pages so far of information. So I have a long list of ideas for my clients and for this podcast, because I want to be able to bring what I'm doing in my real day-to-day work into this podcast and reach people and give them that message as well.
I feel like the big takeaway for me is that if you've helped people from literal prisons, people who are locked up, and you've helped them find their definition of success, and then you have your traditional definition of success of, business owners who have had business success, entrepreneurial success, across that spectrum. That's like the ultimate freedom of having wealth and financial freedom as a successful person or business person, to literally being locked up, but both finding that success, that happiness or joy in their life, that sense of purpose. And so if you can help that, anybody I feel like falls in in that spectrum somewhere, you know? And so that's interesting and exciting to hear more about that. So look forward to hearing more on the podcast.
Thank you. And thanks for all your help with everything too. I appreciate you.